Welcome to this episode of Vetted by Mark Vetter. And today we get to talk with Tara Nattrass. And Tara is the Chief Innovation Strategist for Lenovo. And she has a varied background, beginning with being an elementary school teacher, which makes her near and dear to my heart. And somebody I wanted to get to know better because elementary teachers just start the world in a better way with their kids. She also had time as being a director of elementary education, assistant superintendent, some of the roles paralleling a little bit of my own career, and now is with Lenovo. So welcome, Tara. And I think I hit the highlights, Tara Nattrass. I hit the highlights a little bit. Can you tell us a bit about your journey in getting to where you are with Lenovo?
Yes, and hi, Mark. It is great to be here with you. And I very rarely hear the doctor part. It's usually in a board meeting or something. So no worries at all about
It,
that.
that's an
Um,
earned title in my world. You deserve it. And I
yeah,
apologize if I leave it off.
yes. No worries, no worries at all. So it is good to be here. And I have spent most of my career really focusing on the ways in which we can reinvent what's happening in our schools. From my second year teaching, I will not say first, because the first we're all working to figure out what that looks like, and how we engage with our kids and the best ways to do that, but really thinking about how we can create more flexible and adaptable environments for our kids. Looking at things like competency-based learning, thinking through what work-based learning experiences look like for our students, considering the role of teachers and how we might refine and reframe the role of our teachers in our classrooms. And so I've done that work in a variety of roles from, as you said, teaching elementary school. I have been a literacy facilitator. Most recently, I was the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning in Arlington Public Schools in Virginia, and join you from Arlington today. I since then have had several different consultative roles, all of which have innovation in the title, which means, right, focusing on whatever the thing is that we need to be paying attention to within the education space. I was at ISTE and ASCD as the managing director of innovation strategy before joining Lenovo about 6 months ago. And in all of those roles have really been supporting state departments of ed, school district leaders, and educators in realizing our vision for awesome education, and doing that with educators directly, while also with a variety of partners like Micro K-12, as well as a lot of the nonprofits out there that are also heavily invested in this work.
And possibly the greatest opportunity or the greatest challenge public ed has seen may just be the advent of AI. As it has intruded upon your role or taken over your role, I know you've been part of a lot of the visioning teams throughout the country. What do you see as some of the greatest challenges? Let's start the negative first. What do you see as some of the greatest challenges that's going to come to public education because of generative AI?
I think a lot of it goes back to what is it that we really want for our students in our classrooms? What is our vision for education? And what role does AI play within that vision or not? And I think one of the challenges right now is that a lot of the conversations are focused on either efficiencies or focused on the tools themselves, as opposed to the what is it that we really want to see in our classrooms? If it is competency-based learning, are there ways in which AI can support that vision? And what are the things we need to pay attention to help mitigate some of the risks? Because we may also be jumping in without considering what do we need to be thinking about in relationship to things like harmful bias, student privacy and security, things like over-reliance on AI, how are we engaging in the academic integrity conversations? And so I think the greatest challenge is really the complexity of the conversation and taking the time to engage in that complexity without trying to find a quick insertion of AI into our current structures. because that's not going to help really shift what we want to see in our classrooms for kids.
So are you seeing the changes brought about by AI being evolutionary or revolutionary? Is it going to be a time that we're going to just build a firewall and start again fresh?
I think it depends on how we decide to engage, right? Are we using this as an opportunity to say, I think we're all in a place where we realize school and what's happening in our classrooms needs to look differently. And if we try to layer AI on top of the structures and school environments that have been for the last several decades, we are not going to see the kinds of shifts that we are hoping to see. If we focus the AI conversation on what our vision can be for classrooms that are, as I've described, and as ISTE and ASCD would describe, in alignment with the transformational learning principles, we have an opportunity to make a more significant shift. So it really depends on how we approach the AI and education conversation and what that might look like moving forward.
I love teachers. I was a teacher. I led teachers, but teachers sometimes have a very hard time changing without seeing, touching, feeling the change. They need to model the change and practice that change. And we don't give them the time to do that. Even within service presentations, in my own home district right now, people are sitting through meetings all day today leading into the school year. And it's a lot of procedure, a lot of compliance, a lot of the stuff that we just have to do, but we maybe don't want to do. How do we give teachers the ability to envision a new style of learning? And to me, AI is a huge assessment opportunity. So how do we give teachers those opportunities to affect real change versus just reverting back to the mean?
I think one of the key considerations for that is involving them in the design. So I have had the opportunity to work with teachers and leaders across a variety of districts, and actually leading within districts, to ask the question of, what is our vision for school? If we did not have barriers in place, what are the ways in which we would want to engage students in the learning process? And giving teachers the opportunity to be involved in that design process helps make that shift. Because one of the challenges that we have is that many of us went to school, then we went to school to be educators, and then we went right back into the school environment. And helping people see what's possible, because we do have a lot of pockets of really incredible innovation happening across our country in our school systems. And the challenge is really scaling and sustaining that work. And one of the first things that we need to do is help people see what's possible. When I was leading in a district in North Carolina, Michael Horn had just come out with the book Blended, and we all read it and said, what are the ways in which we can, and what are some of the examples that we can take from this to help us reimagine what school can look like? And we involved teachers and principals and district leaders in those conversations. And they had the opportunity to design what school might look like moving forward. And we have to include all voices, as opposed to the someone from the district office or state level saying, this is what we need to do, because we lose the ownership and we lose the creativity. And so how do we bring people into the conversation? And then how do we show them what's possible? There are organizations like the Learning Accelerator, now full scale in their merger with Aurora, but who have documented these ideas of hop, skips, and leapfrogs, in the ways in which we can accelerate and innovate within our classrooms. And by looking at some of those examples, we can help people see what's possible, because we have to be able to envision it before we can implement it.
So Mark Cuban sent out a tweet. I'm sure I still call them tweets and X posts, whatever, last month. He said, within 5 to 10 years, if a school teaches in a manner where answers by students can be generated by a model, then it's a blank school and way behind. The days of teaching like 2024 will soon need to end. Do you feel that kind of urgency?
I have felt that urgency since I started my career in education. I think that there is a need to shift not only a lot of the conversations around what's happening with AI and the need to shift assessment, but what are the things that we value in education? How do we define education and what we're hoping our students achieve as part of our school systems? And how do we build environments that really focus not only on content knowledge, but more broadly on the skills and attributes? And we're seeing that when we look at the development of profile and portraits of a graduate at the state and district level, and really defining even 20 years ago with the P21 framework, even more than 20 years, time goes way too ridiculously. But even more than 20 years ago with the P21 framework and focusing on communication and collaboration and creativity and pick your 5, 6, or 7 C's. But are we really honing in on that and helping our students understand and helping them build those skills, right? What does that look like? How do we cultivate belonging in our classrooms? How do we spark curiosity? How do we elevate reflection? How do we prioritize authentic experiences, which are some of the key elements of those transformational learning principles to help shift what school looks like? So that urgency for me has always been there. I think it is even more pronounced with the generative and agentic AI conversations that are now taking place.
This gig, helping do podcasts and talking to people across the country, has enabled me to talk to people who, frankly, I may totally disagree with. I love what you're saying, but I've talked to some who I disagree with. I talked to the CEO of the Learning Resource Council, who is excited that a political tidal wave is going to destroy the Department of Education and hopefully kill public education as we now know it. That private education, AI-led schools like the Alpha School out of Texas is the wave of the future because they're frustrated with our slow changing pace. Schools are sloths. We don't do change quickly and well. How do we get the rest of our constituency, from the parent who loves their summers off instead of year-round schools, to the teacher who still wants the teaching wall and the desk in the front? How do we get people to understand the urgency to change to meet students' needs and, frankly, increase learning, but also increase the soft skills that our employers want today?
That is a multi-pronged and complex approach, right? But part of it is helping people see the success. And as I said earlier, involving them in the design. If you can create cohorts of teachers who, and there are many teachers out there who would love to see education look differently than it does today. And we are not capturing their voices nor giving them the opportunity to do that. And so I've seen quite a few districts who have been successful in creating innovation cohorts where teachers apply as teams of teachers and say, we want to do things differently. And we want to design more personalized environments. We want to bring AI into our classrooms in ways that are safe and responsible and help us to build more competency-based learning environments. And so if we can get that core group of teachers and build these cohorts where maybe they are sharing kids throughout the day, or students have 2-hour blocks of time to engage in an inquiry project that is cross-disciplinary. And we see that at schools like CART in Fresno, California, and the Innovation Center in Winchester Public Schools in Virginia, where academics and CTE are coming together to build more work-based learning environments. If we can show what's possible and quickly capture those successes, we can replicate and build off of what that looks like and help it be scalable and sustainable, which have always been the challenges. But I think there is a greater will right now to shift what our school environments look like. It's a matter of helping everyone see the possibilities and be part of that redesign.
So getting away from instructional piece, which you and I both lived as teachers and coordinators and that role, going to the AI role. I have huge concerns about student data. I know districts cannot afford a paid subscription of $30 per student to get blanks AI. Okay. Teachers are using free models out there right now. They're uploading student data, which they should not be doing. But with all positive intent, they want to differentiate lessons. They want to find out how to fit the needs of that 504, that IEP. And there are some models that can do that. How have you and your groups, I know you guys have talked a little bit about how do we rein back in the student data? How do we ensure that the student owns the data and the district owns the data and not the technology vendors? How do we ensure that data that a student, maybe as that AI assistant gets to know that student more and more, it's going to know some things that in some states that student wouldn't share in a public forum? How do we rein in and ensure that data is not shared inappropriately in an era of deregulation?
Yeah, so we need to pay attention to quite a few things in order to make that happen. When we talk about AI in education and we're considering things like which tools we need to bring into the classroom, we really need to focus on what are the opportunities and risks, including privacy, as you have described it. Are we providing the professional learning to staff so that they know not to upload student information into an open AI tool? Have we provided guidelines and policies, whether that is AI specific or building off of acceptable use policies, student codes of conduct, your syllabi, right? Like, what are those tools for support within schools that already exist? And then what are we building into our curriculum? What resources are we making available? And how are we approaching the decisions about that with our teachers? And so some districts are looking at enterprise systems for their school districts, right? And looking at how can we have that closed environment within some of the AI tools. We're also having conversations with districts who are looking at what are some of the things that I might be able to do on an AI PC and keep it on the device as opposed to sending anything to the cloud. So, particularly as we look at tools that I think have a lot of potential for building accessibility and inclusion in our classrooms, whether it's tools like Voice It that can help students who maybe have non-standard speech be able to communicate with their teachers and peers. In order to do that, it is capturing video and it is capturing voice. I would much prefer that those things live on the device as opposed to going to the cloud. So we have some districts who are looking at that. There are others who are looking at building their own specialized language models that will live within their data centers, within their servers, to try to protect that data. And then knowing that that is hard, right? People are still talking about teaching and learning. They're still trying to figure out what happens with guidance and policies, is really vetting the technology companies who are providing AI tools to ensure that the agreements that ought to be in place are in place. And the EdSafe AI Alliance and several other orgs really help to provide some guidance on what that might look like. But it's a mix, right? And are people really informed enough to make informed decisions about what it needs to look like?
I was speaking with Chris Hagel, who's the director of technology in Peninsula School District, Washington State. He is a real leader nationally and locally in this area. And we we're discussing the fact that over the last 15 years, school technology departments have not given away, but our data is not stored anymore on-prem.
Mhm.
Your reading data may be with that vendor. Your math data may be with that vendor. Your IEPs may be in a separate vendor, all stored in servers off-prem.
Yes, all SaaS applications living out in the world.
But now, if we're going to build our own AI model, we need to rehouse that data, either duplicate what's out there or bring it back on-prem. And that's a huge infrastructure cost to districts. You could build those servers in the cloud in one local place. But again, the cost structure there is an ongoing cost structure, right? You're leasing versus buying, so to speak, in that case, maybe. So how are districts, companies like Lenovo, edge computing is of huge interest to me also. I think that it is possibly a solution to our data issue. But how are districts going to be able to bring all that data back, basically reverse the last 15 years and have more of it on-prem, hybrid maybe storage, some in the cloud, some on-prem, and redefine those policies? We're going to have to reclassify. We're going to have to map. We're going to have to do metadata analysis of our own metadata. We're going to have expertise in that area, which frankly, districts can't afford to pay someone with that kind of expertise to create the mapping. Are there any solutions out there?
And so we are working with a couple of districts on this very thing to get a better sense of the complexity and ways in which we might be able to support. So I don't yet have an answer on the what is the solution, but are exploring it with several districts to see what are those possibilities, what is the level of complexity, and what might we do moving forward. So ask me again in 3 months after we've had some deeper conversations, but I think it's one worth having. There are districts exploring opportunities to build things like tutoring tools that live on the device so that students who do not have internet access don't lose out on the opportunities for support at home. And those tools can sit on almost any device, right? Some AI PCs, some AI capable PCs. And so there are those different levels of complexity. What can I build and live and store on my device versus what am I going to need to do a significant infrastructure shift, as you're describing, in order to do? And so we're working with several districts right now on those use cases to also figure out the return on investment, right? Like, what is it that we are going to gain by doing it in this way? And I don't mean a financial return, although that's something we're all considering with the way funding is looking right now. But I mean what will the impact be on instruction? Are we going to be better able to protect privacy and security of student data if we do it in this way? What are the efficiencies that we gain as a system if we build it in this way? And really trying to take a thoughtful approach to what that's going to look like.
Those are answers that I'd love to hear in 3 months.
Yeah,
I have several friends who are, I'm thinking right now, boy, I have friends who'd like to invite you to their district to help imagine that. I can remember having Microsoft come in about 12 years ago, and we drew up 2 hours on a whiteboard, a stacked O365 hybrid environment. And that literally became the model for our work over the next 6 years. And whatever model we come up with to deal with the data in a safe but efficient manner, it needs to be taught in a way that will help district superintendents fund their technology departments to pull off this miracle. Because, we way too often deal with what's inexpensive versus what's right when it comes to student data. And student data should be non-negotiable. It's priceless. It shouldn't be a negotiation tool. But too many districts, I feel, are unable to take that stance because frankly, they just couldn't do it unless the student data wasn't quite as precious. So we've talked a lot about the instructional piece, something about the data piece, ethical pieces around AI. Do you fear, I'm young enough, I'm old enough, however you want to put it, that I remember the very first dial-up coming into my school library in 1984. I was actually a teacher, and boy, that was pretty cool. We had a dial-up internet connection. And then, of course, Google, of course, fiber, everything changed. Teachers said, gosh, students are going to be able to cheat. We had the texting apps where kids could text under the desk and get an answer to a test if we didn't catch them. We've dealt through, the world's going to end. We've heard the world's going to end how many times in the last 40 years? Ethically, do you think that we're going to adapt our assessment to include AI? Are we going to have non-AI, dead zones for assessment? How are we going to deal with the ethical concerns?
I think it all comes down to what is it that we are hoping to measure? And is it content, skills, or attitudes and attributes? And how do we do that? Because AI is embedded in so much already and is going to be continue to be embedded that I'm not sure that we 2 to 3 years from now are going to be able to say, this is an AI tool, this is not an AI tool. So you can use this one, right? I mean, we're seeing that already behind the scenes as we look at adaptive and predictive AI, the generative AI, and agentic AI with multiple models being infused within one particular product. And so it really is about what is it that we want to measure and how do we define academic integrity in a world where AI exists and we are bringing it into our industries, right? I mean, people are using it within their work often. And so one of the things that there are a couple of things that I think about in these conversations with educators. One is not creating an environment where using AI is bad, not using AI is good, but what along that continuum can we say is here is where using AI may be harmful to your learning, here's where it may be helpful to your learning. And helping students understand that, right? Building the AI literacy so that they can make those intentional decisions and not having a teacher having to dictate what that looks like all the time. So that's one piece. Like, are we having those conversations around the helpful and harmful to your learning piece, which I think is essential. I think another piece to this is really helping educators know and understand how AI is being used in industry. Last week you mentioned this earlier, right? Everyone's going back to school. So I've been all over the place having conversations like this with educators and providing professional learning and helping with AI guidance and other things. And one of the sessions that I was most excited about was one where we invited in a woman from Eli Lilly to share how AI is being utilized in drug development and pharmaceuticals, an attorney from Utah to share how AI is being used not just by attorneys, but also in law enforcement. We had one of our Lenovo folks share some of the major projects we're doing that impact environmental and biological sciences so that teachers could know and understand what's happening with AI within industries to then say, okay, if this is what's happening in pharmaceuticals and this is what's happening in environmental science, how do I bring those concepts in an age appropriate and standards aligned way into our classrooms so that we go beyond the chatbot conversation and it really becomes about what is this going to look like in your world of work? And so I think we have to shift beyond that conversation of, this is a no AI assignment to this is you can use AI however you want assignment, and that continuum of like the AI assessment scale and other things that I think are a bridge to where we're going to be 2 to 3 years from now. And our challenge is how do we cross that bridge to get to where we know that things have shifted and that we're measuring what's most important for our future. There's so much in that. I mean, you said ethics, but it really morphed into the academic integrity conversation as you got into the question. And I think there is a lot that plays into that related to curriculum and resources and how we assess and what we think is most important to measure.
I totally agree. I think assessment is the key. Assessment is a part of the learning. I was a big fan of Ken O'Connor back in the day, if you're familiar with his work.
Yes, I am.
Standards-based grading, giving kids the chance to reassess, to demonstrate the learning and assess in a different way. And I think that generative AI gives kids a chance to show what they know in the way that suits them the best. But also, how do we evaluate those soft skills, that collaboration, inquisitiveness, research that are jobs are going to shift rapidly in the next 20 years. The jobs that exist today aren't going to exist in 20 years, probably. So how do we equip our kids with those skills? I think is a great challenge for all of us.
Mhm.
I thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. It's a thoughtful discussion. I know a lot of my educator friends and my technology friends who also are educators and work in the field are going to be very interested to hear what you've had to say. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for the conversation. I really appreciate it.
Okay, take care.